Okay, we're live. Hey, everybody.
Hey, everybody. Normally in webinars, I like to leave everybody the standard webinar 2 minutes to start, but why would we do that? This is LinkedIn Live. Of course, you're going to be here. Of course, you're going to be prompt. Okay, so for any of you who've ever been in the journalism experience, the school, if you will, and I am one of those people, one of the rites of passage that is the professor assigns you the task of covering a student or a city council meeting. They say, okay, wherever city you're in, whatever state government in, city government, doesn't matter, show up to a city council meeting and cover the meeting as a journalist would. Now, don't worry, it is exactly as boring as you think it's going to be. Like Parks and Rec has done nothing to make it look any more interesting than they actually is. They are boring as dry old toast. However, you have to make a story up. And what happens is most students start by saying, well, this person said this and this person said this, and they just gavelled this and they made this decision, and they say, that's the story. And the professor every single time says, that's not your story. Covering the city council is a topic. You have to find something interesting inside that to turn it into a story. Why am I telling you this? Well, it's real simple because so often when we're building employer brand and recruitment marketing and recruitment messages on social media, on video content, or wherever we're talking, job postings, even career sites, we're telling a topic, we're giving information, but we're not telling a story. And in this conversation, we're going to talk about embracing the reality of telling a story, to talk about what makes your company interesting, engaging, exciting, whatever, not just by giving facts, not by giving the topic, but by telling stories. So with me is Bernadette from Stories Inc. She is fantastic. I'm super thrilled that she invited me to be a part of this. And we're going to tag team this concept for the next half hour, 40 minutes, whatever it is.
Yes, love it. Thanks for the intro, James. Thanks everyone for being here today. As James said, my name is Bernadette Van Giesen. I lead marketing here at Stories Inc. And we like to host these learning sessions every other Thursday here on our channel just to talk through employee storytelling tips, insights, themes, things that we're learning while we're uncovering stories for our amazing clients. So I'm really excited to be joined by James today. James, you want to quickly introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm James Ellis. I'm the employer brand nerd. I think about, talk about, write about, do podcast about, occasionally do videos about employer branding is what I care about. So super thrilled that we can combine this. I will say, I think Bernadette knows this, but I think most people don't. I come from a content marketing background. So Stories Inc. has always been a company I've looked to for, okay, they get content. They get this idea of telling stories. It's not just in their name, it's actually in their DNA. And so I'm super excited to kind of talk, to uncover and unpack telling stories to develop your employer brand.
Oh, thank you. And back at you, really admire the work that you're doing. And I think you're really pushing people to move past those initial taglines when it comes to employer brand and really getting deep into who you are, what does your culture mean, and what does it mean for candidates. So back at you, really admire the work that you're doing too.
Oh, thanks. All right, so let's get into it. So, the concept is embracing reality, which we could take that a lot of different ways. So let's focus it in on this idea of story. So talk to me about the difference between story and topic as you see it. Because I think the nice part about these conversations is it's not just the James show. It's not just the Bernadette show. We're going to make some friction. We're going to make some sparks. And we're both going to learn. I think everybody else is going to learn from us talking and unpacking these ideas.
Yes. Yeah. So, I mean, I think you really introduced the topic really well there with topics versus stories. And when you look at employer brand and when you look at companies all around the country and all around the world, a lot of them are talking about the same things in their culture. We're all human beings. We're all at work. We all experience the need for the desire for career growth, flexibility, collaboration, good people to work with, support from leadership. Like these are all topics of things that what it could be like to work at a company. And even if you have terrible flexibility, you still have flexibility at your company. It just is, what does that actually look like? And so looking at those motivations is, I know, a term that you used a lot, but those topics of what a culture is like, but actually challenging yourself to move past it and say, what is the story at your organization? So what does flexibility actually look like? What does working from home actually look like? What does it mean if you're an early career person to build relationships? So kind of like moving past those buzzwords and actually getting to the story in your organization.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, every company says they're flexible in some fashion. Every company offers benefits in some fashion. And yeah, you got to get to the what. You got what is the flexibility? Let's be specific. Are you allowed to work from home 24/7? Are you allowed to work from a beach? Or, hey, you got to be in the office 3 days a week. What is your concept of flexibility? Take it a step farther. Why? Why does your company decide to do that kind of flexibility? Why does your company offer that particular benefit instead of that particular benefit? Because the why is very often kind of where the story lives. This concept of, think about working from home. And yeah, 3 years ago, everybody had to work from home when they could. The story told itself. But today, why are some companies saying you have to come in the office? Why are some companies saying you have to come in the office a little bit? Why are some companies saying, you know what? This COVID thing opened our eyes. Why would anyone come to an office? The why is the most important part of the story. You can't pick the topic, but you can certainly figure out how to turn that topic, in this case, flexibility or work from home, into a story. Is it because working from home lets you work on your own terms? Okay, that's a good why. Is it because it allows you to be more creative? Well, that's an interesting why. Did we decide it's more productive? A valid why. Is it because now the company can attract and hire talent at a wider range of places? A completely valid why. Every one of those whys, however, tells a different story about the same topic. And that, to me, is where the fun part is, right? You have these topics, you were given these topics, HR determined what those topics were, but what's the story behind it? Because you get into the why, you find out why it matters. Because once you unpack the why, it starts to tell more about the company.
Yeah, and I think going back to the kind of embrace reality idea here, all of those things that you said should hopefully be backed by the real experiences in your company. So it's like,
Yep.
if the desire is we excuse me, we want to be able to recruit everywhere. Like, if that's the reason why we're embracing work from home, you should be able to share stories of, like, we were able to hire Jane Doe in Seattle when typically we were based on the East Coast, and
Yep.
look at everything she was able to bring to our company during this time. So, like, embracing the things that are actually happening in your company that support these company decisions, that support these cultural decisions, is really the type of stories that you're looking for.
Yeah, totally. And I think that the interesting part about the word authenticity is that it allows you to turn the negative into a positive. So if I told you this story of a company, or in fact, let's go to Glassdoor virtually, and you look at these companies' reviews, and we saw this nightmare of a review. This place is a horrible place to work. It's chaotic as all get out. Nobody's in charge. I don't know who's making decisions. There's no guidelines. There's no rules. It is just pandemonium. Stay away. That sounds like a horrible place to work. But if I say, as the owner of that brand, I respond and say, look, we get what you're saying. This is a place where we embrace maximum autonomy for everybody who works here. We think you're the expert. You tell us what the rules are. That's not how every company works. And we understand if you didn't embrace that. We think that the more you have autonomy from some people, the more ideas you can come up with. We don't need red tape. You don't need guidelines. We want people to expand their mind and try new things. Here's the fun part. Same company. But I describe them not in two spinny ways, but two different perspectives. And it turns out that if I'm selling this fake company I'm talking about as a place where everybody has autonomy, and that candidate sees a review that says this place is a nightmare, it's pandemonium, that didn't denigrate my brand. That proves my brand. Suddenly that negative problem that didn't work for them shows that I'm not just spinning up, hey, it's a place of maximum autonomy. Doesn't that sound great? It's got a downside. And every good brand, every authentic brand has a downside, because every brand, every company can't be for everybody.
Mm-hmm. So I think that's a really good segue into, so I think we've talked about story versus topic and the importance of really getting to that story and to that why. What advice do you have for kind of like figuring out what your story is as a company? So it's like, there's all these topics, there's all these different aspects of your culture. How do you kind of focus your brand and pick 1, 2, 3, however many?
Yeah. and the dogma of what's the number, that could be a whole separate thing. Let's not get into that. Look, if you ask your recruiters, why should someone work here? You're going to get a laundry list of good reasons. And laundry list is the right word. It could be 100 different positive things. Everything from you feel good on Monday or there's no Sunday scaries. You feel good walking in Monday morning too. The food's really good, which is not really a compelling reason why anybody shows up to work, right? However, if you boil it down, if you figure out of those 100 possible reasons, what is specific, what is attractive, what is different, what is real, Suddenly you're filtering that list of 100 potential things you could talk about, those core brand pillar ideas, into actual branding. So specific, attractive, different, and real. It's not an arbitrary list. It's actually very important. So you say specific in terms of, look, is it actually real? Do you say we like innovation, or can you point to 10 different ways you invest in innovation? Right? Every company says in March they care about women. How many of them have more than the basic level of FMLA legally? Okay, telling me you care about women in March. Okay, tell me how you care about them in April. That's really where you get specific. Show me the program, show me the policy, show me the people telling stories about these ideas. That's what I mean by specific. Attractive, meaning not everybody likes it, but to the audience you're trying to hire, is it attractive to them? So going back to this fake company who cares about autonomy, not everybody wants that level of autonomy. It's kind of terrifying to a lot of people, but there's a small audience for whom that is like gold. That is just everything they could ever want in a company. That's to whom you want to be attractive, which means you don't hide those things that make you special. You amplify them. Hey, we're all about autonomy. This is the good parts. This is the bad parts. But it all leads to, you want autonomy? We have autonomy. Different meaning, how do I help someone make a choice, right? There's only 20 million businesses in North America. Right? You're not the only game in town. How does someone choose you over one of the other 20 million businesses? So how are you different? And different not in an arbitrary way, but in a differentiated value. What's a different meaning? So how does that difference mean something to a candidate? Right? The fact that you offer a vegan meal is cool, but it's not different to me because I'm not vegan. It doesn't impact me, but it might be different and attractive to a different audience. And then, of course, again, embracing reality, it has to be real. So that to me is my mantra. That's kind of like my framework of saying, how do you dig into the brand? Specific, attractive, different, and real.
So, and I mean, you mentioned that laundry list from recruiters. Do you think is working with your recruiters a good place to start there to kind of like figure out just even that list of topics that you might be choosing from?
Absolutely. They are the keepers of the stories that have worked, the ideas that have worked. The challenge with recruiters is that they tend to be very cowboys and cowgirls, kind of going in their own direction, looking at their audiences, focusing. It's the employer brander or the recruitment marketer or the head of TA should be looking to see, how do we aggregate that knowledge, that wisdom of that one recruiter who only talked to nurses or data scientists? How do we bring that back so that that information connects to what a recruiter who's only talking to admins or only talking to executives or only talking to salespeople? How does that work? So they have these individual data points. You need to bring them together. And then a framework lets you say, okay, of all these data points, how do you start to filter? Because filtering is really the process. Like I always joke that employer branding isn't about manufacturing something. I'm here to hold a mirror up to you, not to say you suck, but to say you have the best eyes. Let's not worry about the hair, right? Let's focus on the things that are amazing about you. And that's really what the process is. Let's filter our focus.
Mm-hmm. And then I think I love everything you're saying here. I think like the next kind of question is what happens when you're getting a ton of like really great things? Like how do you pick one? Do you think that there's too many things that someone could be talking about in their
I've never
brand?
had that happen. So I teach classes where I teach people these models and these processes, and I have never had someone say I have too many things that are specific, attractive, different, and real. That honestly, you end up finding that you have a lot of things that are true of 3 of the 4, but not all 4. Like that is more common than having too many things to talk about. It helps if you understand what specific means. It helps if you understand what attractive means. Very often, if there's a problem, it's because your sense of attraction is, how do we become attractive to everybody? That's not what it's about. It's how do you focus on the audience that you care about. If I'm trying to hire a nurse, that means I need to know what's different to them. I need to know what's attractive to them, and I can talk about it to them in a way that other places can't. That's really where the value comes in. So I don't see it where you have too many things. The problem is people are wary of really applying that framework and really only talking about the stuff that's specific, attractive, different, and real, that they just kind of fuzz it out. They talk about stuff that's kind of specific and kind of different and kind of attractive. And then you're back to square one where you have 100 different things you could talk about.
When I think that the trap there is fear of being polarizing or fear of filtering people out, which, I mean, to what you said earlier, the goal is to appeal to the audience who's going to freak out, love working at your company, like absolutely thrive in your culture.
Yeah.
The goal is them. But I do think that there is a lot of, when you get a lot of stakeholders and you get a lot of opinions in the room, there's this fear of polarizing too many people.
there's such a legacy assumption that you need a lot of applicants. And I love to bang the drum that says you actually need no applicants. What you're needing is hires. And those two things are not the same. So people equate the two. If I have lots of applicants, I'll get lots of hires. No, it's easy to hit the apply button and get a lot of people who you'd never want to hire. That is incredibly easy to do. Knowing who you actually want to hire, the traits, the focuses, the motivations, the skill sets, the experience, knowing who you actually want to hire is a different skill. It's the difference between dating and marriage, right? There are plenty of people we know who are really good at the apps and can swipe all day long and get dates all day long. Are they ever getting married? Probably not. The people who are good at marriage are very often bad at dating. It is a different experience. And I think most of recruiting is too focused on how do we attract the maximum number of people. Once you understand that you only need to put one body in that role, you get real specific in a hurry. That's the thing. Most people want to be broadly attractive in a Taylor Swiftian kind of way. I hate to tell you, but I have no interest in Taylor Swift. Even Taylor Swift only appeals to 10 or 20% of the audience. And she's the most popular, she and Beyonce are the most popular things I can think of right now, short of Air and puppies. So even when you are broadly positive, it's still very, very specific.
Well, James, I think that's the first thing I've disagreed with you on today, because
Let's do it.
No, only because I am going to Taylor Swift's concert next weekend and I'm so excited.
And you should be.
But you know what? The way that she does everything is directly appeals to me as a person.
Exactly.
So, you know what? Maybe I actually do agree with you.
I'm 50-year-old white dude, and there's nothing about my demographics that says Taylor Swiftian, and that's fine because there's enough people. Like, look, I like. Now I'm showing my age. Some people who are older. I love Tori Amos, but there's a point at which Tori Amos is no longer talking to me. She's talking to a very particular audience, and it does not include me. I love what she does, but it's not for me. It's fine, right? That's the thing. You don't have to be broadly appealing. You have to know who your audience is. And the better you know your audience, the better you know what they care about. The better you know what moves them and where they live. It makes the process of hiring great people so much easier, so much cheaper.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I think we've talked a lot about
Taylor Swift,
obviously. I mean, I could talk about a topic for another day. But so talking about looking into your culture, kind of finding what makes you different, but then how do we actually make that a reality? And so something that James, in our kind of calls leading up to this, that you said that really resonated with me is that what you reward is what matters. So you kind of like look to, okay, so like, I have an idea of what it is. Like, how do I bring this to life? Like, how do I find these stories? How do I look at it? And I'll let you, this is your idea, so you can say it, but like looking to people who are getting rewarded is a great way to start. Yeah,
I think, look, the company organizations are almost organisms in their own way. They respond to stimuli. And if they want to a certain thing, they reward a certain thing. If they want cutthroat, stop at nothing will win to win the salespeople, they reward cutthroat, stop at nothing, whatever it takes to win the salespeople, which means the reward structure is based on how do we get people to individually maximize their own effort, right? These are, companies where they say the bonus goes to whoever does the most sales. The third place is you're fired, a very Glenn Ross sort of situation. Those places breed cutthroat cultures. How do you know what the culture is? Well, what do they reward? Right? You can say that culture, you can describe that culture in any way, shape, or form. You can spin it to make it seem collaborative, to make it seem happy and friendly. But when you look at the reward structure, you say, wait, there's 40 salespeople and only one person gets a bonus. You can't tell me that's collaborative. You cannot tell me that. However, if you tell me that bonuses in the sales team are structured on thresholds, once the company meets a certain number, everybody gets a share of the bonus. Well, yeah, no one should be individual. They should be focused on helping each other. What you reward defines the culture, what the company is. Now, it goes beyond bonuses. It can be who got the last promotion, who got that kudos from the CEO on the all hands meeting, who gets the pat on the back, who gets the attaboy, attagirl from the team lead. The things that are pointed out are the things that the company likes. That's just what it is. And so if you want to figure out what a company's like, figure out what they reward. And then I think, passing the baton back to you, finding ways to tell stories about what the reward looks like, why it's important, why it's interesting to someone, how it manifests. That is where you start to dig into something beyond the headline, something beyond the tagline to say, this is what it's really like to work at the story. So back to you, how do you tell stories around the idea of, what you reward and what your company and culture is really all about?
And before I answer that question, I think what I'll add is those people, and a question we get a lot from the brands that we work with is, who should I be looking to for these stories? Like, what kind of people should we be interviewing? And there's a lot of different advice that we can give there. But the one thing is, look for people who are thriving in your culture, because those people are the people who are being rewarded. They're people who are getting the pats on the back and the shout outs, because those are people who culture, it works for them, and they're thriving there, and they are happy there, and they are excelling. And so those are the people who are the people that you want to talk to. So interviewing them, uncovering their stories about what it's like to work there. And then in terms of how you do it, our stance will always be that a facilitated approach is always the best, because people live in their job and they live in their company every day. And so they're going to be saying things like, I love who I work with, and it's a really great place to work, and I love the purpose, and I love the motivation. But when you listen to that outside of the company, it's not saying anything about what it's like to work there, because those same things could be said across, what did you say, 20 million workplaces?
20 million businesses in North America. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, that could be anyone, anywhere. And so having that facilitated interview approach allows you to say, great, can you give me an example of that? Or can you tell me the last time you celebrated something at work? What was that win? What was that project that you got submitted and got feedback on that went really well? So kind of asking those follow-up questions is going to be what gets you to that story. And then you can dig from there to ask, what did that mean to you? Why do you continue to do this? Why do you stay? And getting to that why is going to allow you to put that story together in a really compelling way.
Yeah, I think, the people who have that sense of, I stay because of the people. And I think of, okay, in order to test that, what's the place in which people care the most about the people they work with? People working in foxholes being shot at, right? That sense of like this imminent danger that you have to rely on the people around you to survive. These are not what I would classify as exciting, wonderful workplaces, right? So that's, to me, when the best thing you can say is, we have great people, that says you have nothing else to say, and you're going to like base level. I get to stand next to a human, right? That's horrible. So getting into the why, the diving deep into, tell me more about what that feels like, what it means to you. How does it look like? How would I explain that to somebody else? That's really where the better stories happen.
So I'll kind of throw it back to you here now. Do you see anyone doing this really well?
So it's complicated, and branding is one of those things where, back to Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift does amazing branding. How would I know she's not talking to me? And when I see it, I go, it's not for me. It's not interesting to me. Thus, it must suck, right? Well, that's objectively not true, right? Her marketing, her branding, her sense of who she is, who she's speaking to is amazing. It's just not pointing to me. So it's sometimes very hard to look at a brand and say, they're great, they're bad, because I'm not their target audience. Right. Mm-hmm. I was talking to Holland McHugh over at, she was previously at Delta, and she was showing me some of her branding material. And I said, look, we're friends. So I get to say some blunt things. I said, it's kind of boring, isn't it? And she explained how the employer brand idea was so deeply rooted into the bigger, corporate brand, that it was creating this one brand strategy. Now, did the piece of creative scream exciting? No. Was it supposed to? No. And that's the thing. Until I understand the bigger strategy, it's not always easy to say that brand is doing a great job or that brand's not doing a great job. The question is, who are they trying to speak to? What is the message they want to put forward? And how do they extract it, and how do they tell it? It's not always obvious. Now, I will say places like Spotify, they do a great job taking a brand idea, like we're in a band, and taking that metaphor and extending it all sorts of crazy ways, and then applying amazingly attractive creative on top of it. It's gorgeous creative. It's like annoyingly jealous-making creative. That's few and far between, right? Most companies are not Spotify. Most companies are not unicorn type companies that they can have a sexy idea and a cool, everybody needs to have this to listen to music. I mean, is there anything more fun than that? Like, think of your bank. Is your bank going to say, join the band? Because if they do, they've made a wrong turn somewhere. So it's not always easy to say, I like this brand or I don't like this brand, because it's not always speaking to me. But the first thing I look at is it saying something interesting? Can I look at that and say, I think I have a sense of what's behind that idea, that commercial, that ad, that job posting, do I sense depth behind it? Or is it all veneer? Is it all just, hey, quick, put something pretty on the career site? That to me is where I start to say, great, if I see depth, even if it doesn't speak to me, I can see value in that depth. Somebody asked a question earlier about how do I make creative more exciting? Or how do I make the content not feel so samey? Say something real. There is something specifically different about your company. Talk about it. Don't shy away from it. Don't worry about whether it's attractive to everybody, because it's attractive to somebody, right? The concept of going to Mars is attractive to a very particular kind of person, and SpaceX is hiring all of them. Everybody else is like, no thanks. That is a strong brand, despite the fact that they don't do employer branding very much. It's what makes them different. They lean into it. They talk about that. That's how you know they have a good brand.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. So picking the topic and then getting a compelling story about it that makes it unique to your company. Because if it truly is specific and different and real at your company, then someone else isn't going to be able to duplicate it, because that story wouldn't happen somewhere else necessarily.
Exactly. And when you know what specific and attractive, different, real means, you understand that there's nuance to telling a story that occurs only because it is true. Like, for example, if I were to tell you about the amazing time I went to a Taylor Swift concert, I'd say it was fantastic. Could I tell you the song she sang? No. Could I tell you what I wore at that story? No. Why? Because I'm lying, because I don't know. But if it's a thing that really happened to me, there are details in that story that suggest this is a thing that really happens. It creates credibility, right? I could talk about what I was wearing. I could talk about the parking. I could talk about how much a soda costed, at the show, right? I could talk about details that leads to credibility. And that's the thing we don't talk about in recruiting very often, that I sometimes think we should. We're not generally very credible, or we don't work hard at being credible. And that's the power of stories right there. It opens this door to say, this is what we want to talk about. And if it's interesting and attractive to you, come on in the door and learn more. So often people are like, just join us. We're a great company. We got this award that says we're a great place that people can work at. And I won't say that other thing, right? I won't, join us, hire, we're hiring, all this stuff that's just blanket stuff. If you're saying something interesting, the person who wants that will hear it and they start to believe it because it was true for you. You can talk about the nuance and the subtleties and the details that make it credible and real.
One thing that I'll add there is to realize that the candidate journey is long and there's a lot of touch points, and someone could be not even looking for a job, but they think you're an interesting brand and they might follow you on social, or actively looking for a job, and then they're looking every single place in the world to learn more about you. And so knowing that you need to be sharing this type of content, these type of stories a lot and often and consistently, and every single touch point is an opportunity for them to learn more about your organization. So if, let's say, an example of one of my favorite projects that we've had at Stories Inc. is we worked with a global pharmaceutical company to activate their EVP, and their EVP was all around career opportunities. And where they felt like they were unique in the market was that while a lot of competitors maybe were pushing people to climb the ladder, or you have to either move up, or this isn't the place for you, they really gave people the opportunity to become an expert in their fields, or do you want to upskill and then move to a totally different department, giving people the mobility to be able to build the career that meant something to them personally. And so to do that, we traveled all around the world. We interviewed, I think, 50 people around the world of different tenures, job categories, totally different career paths, and then created unique career growth stories for them to be able to share across all their channels. So if you were to follow them on something, you would see just all of these different unique career paths. And so multiple different pieces of content that point back to that same message.
Yeah, and there's 2 points to kind of take away from that. Yes, by doing all those different stories and creating all those perspectives on a single idea, you create credibility. It's not a thing you said, it's a thing you see in a 360 perspective. It's true from every angle. It's true of the entry-level person to the CFO. It's true to everybody in every office, in every role, in every function. It must be true. That creates credibility. At the same time, telling stories that are not transactional, that don't need to now apply here, right? That's the thing. The research right now from Eller Bass Institute, it's a B2B research, but I think the research applies equally well to recruiting, is that at any given time, of the total people you could hire, only about 5% are in market, meaning they're looking for a job, meaning they're on job boards, they're on LinkedIn looking at your stuff. That means there's 95% of people you would love to hire who have no interest in most of the content and most of the materials you're producing right now. If you go to your recruiter's LinkedIn and their social, and it just says, join me, No one out of market wants that. They won't hear it. It has nothing to resonate with. It is completely useless to them. If instead they say, what does, going back to your farm company, what does perpetual career growth look like? Well, shoot, I don't know what the story is, but I'm pausing and looking at more. That's interesting to me. I'm not looking for a job, but that is legitimately interesting to me. So suddenly, those kind of stories can appeal to all these people who are not actively looking for a job, so that you can put your brand in their consideration set, so that by the time they do start to look for a job, you are the first company they look for.
Mm-hmm. Totally agree. Okay. I think that was a lot of the things on our outline today. We are at the 30-minute mark. Are there any kind of final thoughts or anything, James, that you want to leave the audience with?
I talk about this stuff all the time. So I love kind of getting into this. So this is a really interesting conversation because, like I said, I love content marketing, but I don't necessarily practice it to the same level you do. So I think there's value in seeing, like, you think of a story and you think, oh, it's going to do X. I think stories and employer branding have multiple purposes and multiple outcomes. They can create credibility. They can extend reach to people you wouldn't normally talk to. It can lead to reinforcing the culture and reinforcing the value structure. The more a candidate sees that a company cares about self-development, the more they're excited by it, the more they show up. And guess what? That company now has one extra person who cares about self-development, which means that value that you thought you espoused is actually more true. Suddenly, if a poacher comes and says, hey, we offer self-development to an employee, they can look around and see the reality and see how self-development is true in a 360, or they can listen to what a poacher says, which is just a claim and isn't ever proved, and say, yeah, I'm good. It's a very nice thing to say, but I'm actually getting the thing you're promising here. There's so many ways a story makes an impact. We do a pretty bad job measuring all the different ways, but I think having a story forward viewpoint on how to activate your employer brand is probably the most effective and ultimately least expensive way of making your brand work.
And one thing that I'll add, I think we've been talking a lot about candidate-facing employer brand and storytelling here, but when you share those stories internally, and all for creating brand new stories every single day, but the beautiful thing about stories is they can be repurposed, they can be shared across different mediums. You really can stretch them really far. And then by sharing them internally, you're doing that reinforcement internally of saying, what you award, kind of like reinforcing those kind of things, being like, this is someone who collaborated really, really well. This is an awesome story about what collaboration looks like here. By amplifying that to your employees, it's reminding them like, oh, like that's a great way to collaborate. That's something that I should pursue. That's something that I should incorporate into my workflow. So it reinforces that culture, which has employee engagement, retention, like all of those things that you're looking for internally too. So really can stretch those stories a long way.
Totally. Stories are incredibly powerful. There's a reason why, cave people started becoming people when they started to tell stories. It's how they transferred information. It's how they transferred knowledge across generations. It's how we became people. And I think it's incredibly powerful. I don't think we spend enough time talking about it.
Totally agree. Okay, James, where can everyone find you? Thanks so much for being here. Thanks so much for being here today. This has been fun.
They can find me right here. I live on LinkedIn, it seems. No, I am on LinkedIn like 24/7. It's terrifying. So if you look up Employer Brand Labs, either on the web or on LinkedIn, that's where I am. Otherwise, James Ellis on LinkedIn. It's the easiest way to do this. I'm not even plugging LinkedIn. I just happen to be there all the time.
Yeah, same. It is terrifying how much I'm on LinkedIn. But Bernadette Van Giesen on LinkedIn. Please follow Stories Inc. If you like sessions like this, we do them every other Thursday. And we look forward to connecting with you in the future.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Bernadette. Thanks, Stories.
Yes. Thanks, everybody. Bye.